short-staffed. Russell, then the store manager, said she made and then remade an order for Rosemary Hain. Ms. Hain was not satisfied with the final product. In a video shared widely online, she can be seen yelling at Ms. Russell before throwing the burrito bowl at her face. "I didn't expect it at all," Ms. Russell, 26, said. "I just blinked and there was sour cream dripping from my hair." Eventually, someone called the police. The judge offered Rosemary Hain a chance to reduce her sentence with a catch. 60 of her 90 jail days would be suspended if she worked 20 hours a week for 8.5 weeks, or 60 days at a fast food restaurant. Ms. Hain, 39, agreed to take the judge up on his offer. Ms. Hain was required to complete her time as a fast food worker by the time she reported to jail. The sentencing, the sentencing came as a surprise to Ms. Russell. "I thought she was going to get a slap on the wrist, but she didn't. She is going to get to walk in my shoes." Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh teaches us how empathy and forgiveness connect, using Jesus as an example in his book, Living Buddha, Living Christ. He talks about it this way. Jesus told us to love our enemy. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." This teaching helps us to know how to look at the person we consider to be the cause of our suffering. If we practice looking deeply into the person's situation and the causes of how they came to be this way, the way they are now, and if we visualize ourselves as being born in their condition, we may see that we could have become exactly like them. When we do that, compassion arises in us naturally, and we see that the other person is to be helped and not punished. In that moment, our anger transforms itself into the energy of compassion. Suddenly, the one we have been calling our enemy becomes our sibling. This is the true teaching of Jesus, Thich Nhat Hanh says. And yet, part of the work we have to do today is to identify the process of offering forgiveness as only one of the possibilities of forgiveness. Forgiveness, a work of empathy, reconnecting, and reconciliation, is not compulsory. Forgiveness, in the realm of the work we choose to do, aligns with the consent we may or may not choose to give. There is yes, no, and maybe when it comes to forgiveness. The idea that you can and will forgive is an example of yes. What about the times we say no to forgiveness? This might be the realm that invites the most exploration, given that there is a popular understanding that people must forgive, that there is no other path to healing. Let's revisit the words of Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg. We live in a world that focuses on pushing forgiveness as the greatest ideal. In our culture, we so often see victims of harm pressured to forgive their harm doer without asking the harm doer to have done anything to care for the person they hurt, or for an institution to care for the community it harmed. What does this mean? It means that forgiveness comes after harm, but also after amends. Expecting forgiveness before we make amends is a really bold-faced example of putting the cart before the horse, the tail wagging the dog, the second step before the first. If we cannot command forgiveness, what we can do is two parts. The first action we can take is to make amends to the best of our ability. Rather than imagining that someone we harmed must forgive us, we can commit to first things first, offering repair and making amends. Carlene Lehman explains amends this way. We work to right the wrong and show with our behavior that we won't continue the hurtful pattern. In his poem, A Great Wagon, Sufi mystic Rumi has this to say. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Making amends has the power to take our relationships beyond wrongdoing and right doing. Though the harm we do cannot be erased, we can clear the field for one another. We can reconnect in a new beginning, wiser, informed by our willingness to work to make things right, or to receive the work of repair in good faith. Once, when I was studying on the subject of forgiveness, I came across some research from the University of Michigan. The researcher had broken the process down into 31 steps. I don't know about you, but 31 steps is too many for me. I'd like to describe amends and repairs for you today with 6 simple ways to reflect. While 6 may also be a lot, one thing I want you to notice is that it is not by memorizing or by going perfectly through an exact process that we make amends. It is rather by acting in new ways that repair can occur. So I'm going to tell you these, and then we'll talk about them. The 6 elements are tell, imagine, act, reflect, forgive and be forgiven, and heal. The first idea is that we begin by telling the story of our mistakes, what they were, who they harmed, what we might have done instead. Spencer Johnson, an American physician and writer, defined the urgency this way. Integrity is telling myself the truth, and honesty is telling the truth to other people. When we recount the harm accurately, we give room for shared meaning and empathy to arise. The first element is telling. The second element is to imagine. Imagine what the situation would be like if it were better. This might be work that you can do together with a person you are making amends with, if they're open to discussing it. In the case of something broken, it may be able to be fixed or replaced. In the case of a missed opportunity, a similar opportunity may be arranged. We move then from imagination to action. Do something to make it better. One person, in thinking of action, tells their story this way. The other day, I wasn't very kind to a customer service phone rep. I've been 99% spiritually fit in this regard, but I'll just say I was having a bad morning, secondary to some new meds I'm on and adjusting to. Anyways, I called back the next day when I was more myself to apologize. I was put on the phone with a supervisor. I thought he was going to yell at me or something. He was very professional and courteous with me. During the conversation, he paused and said, I have to say, in all the years I've worked here, there have been many angry customers, and we've never had one call back to apologize. You are the first. Believe me when I say this will make a difference to the rep you spoke with. And we can think of this as charming and as good work. But it is important for us to remember that the people in our lives that we love the most are waiting for us to clean up our actions as well. Waiting for us to tell the truth about what we've done and how we can and will not just talk better, but do better. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke offers, I love the dark hours of my being. My mind deepens into them. There I can find, as in old letters, the days of my life already lived and held like a legend and understood. Action, followed by reflection, is one of the key ways we grow as people and mature as members in a community. The days we have already lived give us clues like old letters. We can interpret our actions by their context and lean into the understanding that insight shows us. And yet, it will take time and attention. You can choose to give that. Choose to build health into your relationships, not by default, but by intention. The next step is to forgive, to set aside the offense as unfinished business. We say maybe because as we began with the idea that amends are the work of one who has done harm, it is not the work of the harmed person to forgive in a compulsory way. Consider what Rabbi Danya Rettenberg reminds us of this way. Often we push forgiveness on the victim. Ultimately, forced forgiveness without asking anything of the perpetrator is a way to reinforce the existing status quo and structures of power. But part of receiving forgiveness is also for us to forgive ourselves, to allow in both self-forgiveness and the forgiveness of others, and to allow that to reach us. Leon Brown puts it this way: you cannot travel back in time to fix your mistakes, but you can learn from them and forgive yourself for not knowing better. This might be work that takes some time. You have to revisit the ground of self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others over and over. But hear me clearly tell you that you are included in forgiveness. You are worthy of forgiveness because you are human. Dr. Alexander DeMille sums it up this way. Sometimes you may find it easier to forgive others than to forgive yourself. This often happens if you feel unworthy in some way. Wrapped in your suffering, you forget your true nature, your true value, your true form. You forget that you are part of the universe, of God, of divine perfection. You are part of infinite intelligence that at its core is unconditional love itself. Isn't it time you let go of the stories you've been telling yourself? Stories of incompleteness, of unworthiness, and of powerlessness. When you are ready to forgive yourself, you are ready to let go of your suffering. When you are ready to live the beautiful and inspired life that is yours, your community will be waiting for you, to listen to you with compassion, with kindness, with love, to provide a safe, sacred space in which you can let go, grieve, and heal, to help you realize that you are worthy of love, of joy, and of peace. Please know this. You are loved unconditionally just as you are. If you decide to forgive yourself and to forgive others, you are loved unconditionally. If you decide to hold on to pain, you are still loved unconditionally. Regardless of what you choose, you are loved unconditionally. Beauty is within and around you always. Kindness, compassion, and healing are there for you, always. Forgiveness is here, within, around, and for you, always. Is there forgiveness that's out of your reach and your control? What do you think? Yes. At the same time, there is much that is within your reach. Your ability to tell the truth about yourself, your ability to take action, your ability to forgive yourself as an action of strength and healing. Also then, your ability, when and how you choose, to offer forgiveness, to make repair together with people you care about and people who know you, even when they are the same people. New England poet Robert Frost tells an amazing story in his poem, Star Splitter. Have you read Star Splitter? He talks about a neighbor called Brad McLaughlin who, once he fails at farming, burns down his farm and buys a telescope. And in the poem, they argue about the telescope. Frost says, "What do you want with one of those blamed things?" I asked him well beforehand. "Don't you get one?" Brad says, "Don't call it blamed. There isn't anything more blameless in the sense of being less. A weapon in a human fight," he said. "I'll have one if I sell my farm to buy it." There, where he moved the rocks to plow the ground, and plowed between the rocks he couldn't move. And then, after such loose talk, it was no surprise when he did what he did and burned his house down. In the poem, it's considered a blight, a terrible harm to the community. But upon reflection, this is also said. The first thing next morning, we reflected. If one by one we counted people out for the least sin, it wouldn't take us long to get so we had no one left to live with. For to be social is to be forgiving. Our thief, the one who does our stealing from us, we don't cut off from coming to church suppers. But what we miss, we go to him and ask for. He promptly gives it back. That is, if still uneaten, unworn out, or undisposed of. I know that you know that being a person is some of the hardest work you'll ever do. But in closing, I want to remind you of one of the lines from a poem of my own, having to do with spilling the light, the title poem itself. The chalice is a reminder that what flame we keep inside us cannot light the way. The light must spill to shine. The thing you must be is yourself, unadulterated, shedding the willingness to journey alone, as though you are made of something hard and unforgivable. You are human. You belong. Right here, right now. And together, we will chase away the sickness, the secrets, and leave only the open possibility that the future is a space for growth. So may we be. Amen.